What if I told you that Geralt wasn't even supposed to be the main character of the first Witcher game? It was someone else until one developer had a literal dream that changed everything. In today's video, we're going over some wild behind-the-scenes facts from The Witcher 1, straight from Artur Ganszyniec, the lead story designer of this game. So let's not waste any more time. Hey, it's Alex, and before we get into the details, two things to note. First of all, shout out to Artur Ganszyniec for sharing all these stories on his channel. I link it in the description, definitely worth checking out, especially if you have never played or seen the game, it can be a great way to discover it. So in this video, I'll be talking about all the things he shared in his first episode, but now a bit of context. The Witcher came out in 2007, built by a team that started with just 15 people and grew to nearly 100 developers by the end of production using the BioWare Aurora Engine with a budget of about $5 million. And so, in this video, and maybe even the series if I make more episodes, you'll see that the money and the engine were two of the biggest challenges. But let's start with something very interesting. The first version of The Witcher didn't even store Geralt. You actually played as another Witcher named Kaer, a customizable main character. Geralt was just an NPC you met along the story because the original concept took place during the books, not after them. Then, the studio co-founder Michał Kiciński came in and said he had a dream. He said, "We have to play as Geralt." That single dream changed the entire project. They had to rewrite the whole story because in the books, Geralt is presumed dead. So they invented the amnesia narrative to explain his return, a narrative choice that actually carried all the way to The Witcher 3. And of course, Kaer still appeared in the final game as an NPC. It's insane to think that we could have never played with Geralt, and the next games would have been totally different. Then, he talks about the combat system. Artur revealed the combat was designed because the creative director, Michał Kiciński, wanted something simple. And I quote, "A game you can play with one hand while drinking beer." Yeah, different times. So that's why the combat ended up being all about timed clicks. You're basically playing a rhythm game with swords. It's one of those choices that aged strangely, but now it kinda makes sense. And to be fair, once you get the hang of the combat, it's actually pretty intuitive. Of course, it's not perfect, but the thing is, the engine was made for turn-based games, so I think that also held back some of the creativity. Be honest though, have you ever actually tried playing a game one-handed? I genuinely need to know if this design philosophy works in real life. The Prologue was remade 5 times. 5 times. Every time they finished a new act, they learned so much they had to go back and rewrite the beginning. For example, earlier versions didn't include the mage, only the professor, but they later introduced him to make feel the player more important when meeting him again. CDPR games are always about choices, and this was the first one to really experiment with that. Originally, only the Frightener boss fight was part of the prologue, but Artur said by the 4th or 5th version, they introduced the choice between fighting the Frightener or the mages. Each rewrite brought new characters, tutorials, or gameplay systems they had learned to implement over time. The character Leo, who Artur said was based on a real photo of one of the devs, was added as a tutorial companion to help players learn the basics. But the real nightmare wasn't the story, it was the engine itself. Like I said in the intro, the team was using BioWare's Aurora Engine, which powered Neverwinter Nights, a game distributed by CDPR in Poland. But the problem is that engine was never meant for third-person action or cinematic storytelling. They even had to make entire cutscenes just to fake a jump animation because the engine simply couldn't handle characters jumping dynamically. That's why The Witcher 1 sometimes includes cutscene literally just to hide animations. And since the engine only supported one walkable layer, stairs and upper floors had to be faked using teleportation. Many design choices, like blocked paths or tight spaces, were actually technical workarounds disguised as design. The use of Morhen is also very interesting. In fact, we learned that early versions of the story actually took place around Morhen. You can see that the area is modeled in the game's opening cinematic, but it was never used in the actual game. So they scrapped the idea, kept the area only for the intro cutscene, and later reused it in the official DLC, The Price of Neutrality. As Artur puts it, and I quote, "Geralt needs to be around people and make choices." And yeah, Morhen just wasn't populated enough, so that setting didn't really work in that case. The over-the-shoulder or third-person camera is super common nowadays in most well-known RPGs and adventure games, and The Witcher 3 is famous for that style too. But back then, the isometric camera was the default view the developers intended since the engine was built around that. However, Artur said that the team was obsessed with the first Gears of War, so they tried to make The Witcher work with an over-the-shoulder camera. And when they got the first prototype, they loved it, so they decided to add it to the game. It actually looked cool until they realized a lot of the textures in the game were horribly pixelated up close. Another case of a great idea in the wrong decade. Personally, I love playing with this camera, so I'm really grateful to Gears of War. So like Artur said, the game was rewrites a lot of times. And all this created another problem, leftover characters that didn't make sense anymore. Like the Professor. He's one of the villains in the game and was based on a book character, a well-educated bandit with glasses. But the thing is, the original story they wrote took place during the Witcher saga, not after it. So originally, the Professor being alive made sense. But when they rebooted the story to take place 5 years later, they just never updated him. So in Polish, his name was changed to Master of Arts, but the devs figured no one outside Poland had read the books, so they kept the name The Professor in English. And yeah, back in 26-27, the Witcher books were mostly known in Poland and a few nearby countries, so most players had no idea who Geralt even was. I don't think it's a big deal, but I'm curious to see if they will change his name in the remake. This next part is probably the most controversial decision they ever made. Artur talks about one of the most infamous things in The Witcher 1, its mature direction. And by mature, I mean Triss wearing a low-cut outfit that literally contradicts the books. In Sapkowski's novels, she says that she'll never wear revealing clothes again because of her magical scores. Artur mentioned they had plans for an elegant evening dress, but at the time, character models and outfits were merged, so there wasn't time to redesign her. Then, there is the sex scenes. They wanted to target a mature audience, and, as Artur jokes, appeal to young players discovering things. But again, they didn't have time or budget for proper cutscenes. Early versions looked creepy, so they replaced them with collectible romance cards. It's a system where every time you sleep with a woman, you get a collectible card of her. Kinda like Pokemon, yeah, okay, I'll stop there. Artur says he was never a fan and still isn't, and I can understand why. But that's how The Witcher 1 defined its adult tone. Oh, and they also added boob physics, because of course they did. The developers were afraid the game didn't have enough RPG features, because, like we said earlier, it was originally designed for character creation. So they started adding all kinds of systems to make it feel more like a real RPG. They introduced new weapons like daggers and axes, though honestly, they weren't that useful since Witchers mainly fight with swords. And if you have played the game, you know that they are not really useful. It's one of those cases where the feature exists, but you never actually use it. They also brought in alchemy, gifting, meditation, and other minigames to flesh out the RPG systems. Some of it worked, some of it didn't, but in my opinion, it's what gave The Witcher 1 its charm. There are also a few smaller details worth mentioning before we wrap up. Some dialogue lines still reference skinning beasts, a mechanic that was cut for budget reasons. Alchemy was even supposed to include a full cinematic animation, but that too never got implemented. Both are things I could totally see be added in the remake. Leo was described as an orphan of war from Nilfgaard, which helped make the world feel bigger, reminding players that not everything had to be shown on screen. They even wrote extra dialogue with Leo or Lambert just to make sure players were teleported correctly and didn't miss key interactions. So yeah, that's it for today. Listening to Artur talk about this stuff is just so cool to hear. If you enjoy this kind of behind the scenes story, check out Artur Ganszyniec full dev playthrough on YouTube. It's honestly a goldmine of early Witcher story. Tell me if you like this episode. I might make a second one because he actually explained why Ciri and Yennefer aren't in the game, and it's really interesting. So yeah, let me know. Thanks for watching until the end, and don't forget to like and subscribe if you want to see more videos about the Witcher's development stories.